$11. That's it. That's what some people think is enough for an adult to live on for a week. Let's be clear, this isn't about buying a few extra coffees. This is about surviving. Rent, food, bills, all on $11. It's laughable, it's insulting, and it's a terrifying reality for those subjected to it. We're not talking about kids saving up for candy here. We're talking about grown adults trying to make ends meet in a world that's already expensive enough. Imagine telling your landlord you can only pay a fraction of the rent this month. Picture explaining to your kids that dinner is on hold because $11 doesn't stretch that far. This isn't about budgeting, it's about basic human dignity. It's about recognizing that $11 a week is not a safety net, it's a slap in the face. It's a system designed to keep people trapped, struggling to stay afloat while the rest of the world watches in disbelief. This system needs to change, and it needs to change now. Valentine's Day, March 7th. These dates should be about love and the promise of spring, but in this broken system they're just looming deadlines. Deadlines for what, you ask? It hardly matters, that's the whole point. When you're living on $11 a week, every day feels like a deadline, every purchase is a calculated risk. Every decision is overshadowed by the constant fear of running out. So while these specific dates might seem random, they highlight the absurdity of the situation. These deadlines are a distraction, a way to avoid addressing the real issue. It's like putting a band-aid on a gaping wound and saying, "There, that's better." It's not better. It's a temporary fix that ignores the root cause. We need to stop focusing on arbitrary deadlines and start demanding real solutions. Solutions that provide adequate support and allow people to live with dignity, not just scrape by until the next arbitrary date on the calendar. Let's call this what it is, an allowance, except it's not for teenagers mowing lawns or doing chores. This is for adults. Adults who are expected to navigate the complexities of life on a pittance. The very concept is demeaning. It strips individuals of their agency, reducing them to dependence, relying on a meager handout. It's a constant reminder of their struggles, a scarlet letter of financial insecurity. Imagine having to justify every purchase, every cent spent, knowing that you're constantly being judged for how you manage, or rather fail to manage, on such a paltry sum. The mental toll alone is staggering. And let's not forget the social stigma, the shame of admitting you're reliant on an allowance as a grown adult, the fear of judgment from friends, family, even strangers. It's a heavy burden to bear, and it's one that no one deserves. This isn't about handouts, it's about respect. It's about creating a system that empowers individuals, not one that infantilizes and devalues them. Section 4. Key Point Health Services. Masters of Misdirection, Key Point Health Services. A name that suggests support, assistance, a helping hand. The reality, however, couldn't be further from the truth. Instead of addressing this issue head-on, they've become masters of misdirection. They'll point to complex regulations, budgetary constraints, any excuse to avoid taking responsibility. They'll talk about ongoing reviews and future considerations, all while people struggle to afford basic necessities in the present. It's a classic case of bureaucracy at its worst, prioritizing process over people, paperwork over progress. They're so busy dotting their I's and crossing their T's that they've lost sight of their fundamental purpose: to serve the community. This isn't about red tape, it's about human lives. It's about recognizing that behind every single one of those $11 allowances is a person. A person with hopes, dreams, and the right to a dignified existence. Key Point Health Services, it's time to stop hiding behind excuses and start providing solutions. Section 5, excuses. The dog ate my homework and other lies. Let's be clear. The excuses offered up by Key Point Health Services are about as convincing as a kid claiming the dog ate their homework. We've heard it all before. It's complicated, we're working on it, our hands are tied. These are not reasons, they're excuses. They're a smokescreen designed to obscure the real issue, a lack of will, a lack of empathy, and a fundamental failure to grasp the severity of the situation. It's easy to hide behind bureaucratic jargon, to blame regulations, to point fingers elsewhere. It's much harder to look someone in the eye who's struggling to feed their family on $11 a week and say, "We're doing enough," because they're not. They're nowhere near doing enough. And until they acknowledge that, until they stop with the excuses and start offering real solutions, they're complicit in perpetuating this unjust system. Section 6. The clock is ticking. Consequences of inaction. The consequences of this inaction are dire. We're not just talking about missed meals or unpaid bills, although those are serious enough. We're talking about the erosion of hope, the crushing weight of despair, the slow death of dreams deferred. Imagine the constant stress of living paycheck to paycheck, except your paycheck barely covers a tank of gas. Imagine the humiliation of having to rely on food banks and charity, not because you're lazy, but because the system has failed you. This isn't just a financial crisis, it's a moral one. It's a stain on our collective conscience, a stark reminder of the inequality that continues to plague our society. We can't afford to wait any longer. The clock is ticking, and every day that passes with no action is another day that people suffer. Section 7. Demand better. A call for change. This isn't a radical request, it's a basic human right. The right to live with dignity, the right to have enough to survive, the right to a system that supports its citizens, not one that keeps them trapped in a cycle of poverty and despair. We need to demand better. We need to demand that Keypoint Health Services stop with the excuses and start providing real solutions. We need to demand an end to the $11 allowance and the implementation of a system that provides adequate support for those who need it most. This isn't about charity, it's about justice. It's about creating a society where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, not just survive. Contact Keypoint Health Services. Write to your elected officials, raise your voices and demand change, because silence is no longer an option.